So I know for many photographers, using one light or two lights or one light and a reflector is their working kind of standard. And I get it because I do it as well. However, if we were looking at the more classic setup of lighting for portrait photography in the good old days, as it were, the way that I was taught, we were looking at 4 lights. We were looking at the key light to give us the working exposure, the shape and the subject modeling, as it were, to give us the depth and the 3-dimensional look, to light the 5 planes of the face, the forehead, the chin, the 2 cheeks and the nose. And then we were using a fill light, which was to kind of illuminate the plane of X. Plane of X is basically, imagine a piece of glass where the client's face is. Imagine it going floor to ceiling, left to right, even illumination. That's what it was. And it was kind of down about 1.5 stops to 2 stops less than the key light itself. Then we would have a form of separation light, which was usually either a background light to illuminate the background, or it would be a separation light, as in to light the hair and the shoulders to separate the client away from the background in that way. So if we were then looking at the 4th light, it would obviously be the opposite of what we use the separation light for. So in other words, key light to give us a working exposure, fill light to fill the shadow, a separation light to light the hair and the shoulders, etc. And then we'd use a background light. And this is a kind of example like we're seeing on screen, where we're using a light on the left-hand side to kind of illuminate the background. Then we've got a background that is being illuminated more through spillage of light and from having a painted highlight in the middle. But on the right-hand image here, you can see that there is a full background light behind the subject, giving the illumination. So if we go, well, okay, in the post I've made a mistake and I wish I had used the background light, we can actually do this in the likes of the post-production without any trouble. So if we're going into the kind of the masking facility within the likes of Bridge, or in this case in Camera Raw, we can simply go to the likes of a preset that we've made, kind of click onto it. It would then update that image to add a background light behind the subject. And better still, we've got the ability to move the actual backlight around our scene, unlike when we do it in the conventional way, where basically the light is fixed and that's what it's going to illuminate. Let's look how we do that first, and then we'll talk about the actual use of the actual backlight itself. So if we just first of all delete the masks, okay, so we just click up onto the mask and we delete all masks. So that's gone. This is the original image. We want to click on the masking icon in both Lightroom and in Adobe Camera Raw like we are now. And then we're going to click ourselves into a radial gradient. In this point, we'll kind of click and highlight the shape and the type of light that we want. Don't worry, this is editable in the way that we're going to work as well. So once that's in place, we can then go in and say, well, okay, I want to lighten this area of the photograph. Now, because we're using a masking and we've put it in front of the subject, even though a little bit of the background that's visible is being illuminated, so is the shirt of the guy in his face. But all we need to do is actually click on subtract and then select subject. And then Photoshop has basically done exactly that for us. It allows us now to move that light around the place. So that means if we now turn this into a preset, so we go into the more image settings, save settings, and in this case, all we're going to do is work into masking. And it's clicked on the masking here. We're going to press save. It's going to ask us to give it a name. So in this case, you can see I've got it up here, 00 add backlight. So let's just call this one 00 backlight masking. And we press save. Then I can reapply this. So in other words, if I just do that once more and I delete it, then I come into the likes of the presets. We look at backlight masking like we just applied. We can see it, the difference between here and here. We just click onto the add backlight masking in place with it, and then it's done. So that's going to be saved. If we then want to apply that to other images, so if it hasn't fired on multiple photographs, the great thing about the technique we just used, that's Control R to bring it into RAW, selecting all the images, we'll Alt S to sync them all in the way, but then we'll actually go and add to all of these images that preset, which is the backlight masking. Pressing OK to it, it's now updating all 4 of these images, and as you can see, it's given me an estimated time of around about 20 seconds to complete the task and things. So this is a really quick fix for us to make the decision whether we want a backlight on or not and things, but it is a secondary kind of thing that we're doing. And I would always say, why aren't we using the backlight in the traditional way as such? So as you can see here, if we just come up into the mask and we identify that mask, we've now got the option to move around the mask. We can kind of change its diameter. So if we were using groups and it was long, skinny, or we can actually make it narrow. One of the key things to do with a background light, though, is to make sure for the majority of the time in the classics, the brightest point of the mask, in this case the middle point of the radial, doesn't come any brighter above the shoulders. We definitely don't want it above the head, because this will give us a halo effect, whereas what we're trying to do is actually just give some separation to the image. So that's using the likes of the masking if we've kind of forgotten to use the likes of a background light, or we like the idea of adding a background light because we've forgotten. One of the other benefits of this, so if we kind of select that image without the backlight again, bring it into RAW. If we go ahead and click on the preset, okay, we could do that. Let's do it live though again, just so you can see the technique. Clicking onto the mask, yes, radial gradient, click and dial out to the shape and size that you want. Reposition it to the position that you want. Make the adjustments to the photograph. Hit subtract. Hit subject rather than select people, yeah? Hit subject. This makes it a lot easier for us to move it around the scene rather than select people, because that would actually not kind of take into account any props or whatever it would be. Remember that we've got this ability to here. And at the same time, of course, we could go in and say, well, in fact, add a blue gel behind him, or better still, kind of go in and actually change it to a yellowy green or a kind of a lighter blue, your choice. So remember, clicking in, choose the colors that you want. I'll exaggerate it for now. Let's go to a classic amber. And then we can basically either have less or more of the saturation, depends on what we're trying to achieve. So that is a really quick way to not only add a background light to the image, but it's also a simple way to actually add colored gel into the backlight. As a rule, remember the backlight doesn't want to be the brightest light in the scene. That should always be the face as a rule. But obviously then we want some separation with the body away from the background, and that's what we've just achieved. So if we just kind of click the mask off, you can hide the mask, put it back on again. You can see the difference that makes. It's a quick trick, but it really does work well. But I would still say that if you're looking to have a consistent style, add the background light as a light in the physical setup itself.